When I moved back to Claude in 1987, after being away for about 40 years, why I had moved up and bought some land and built a house here in town, and then got the house finished. Why I got to talking to some people around about a museum, and should we Armstrong County history, how to preserve it best, and the people that I talked to was all thought that this was the right way to go, that this county had the history and we needed to preserve it. So one thing led to another, and the more people I'd talk to, the more people I'd find in favor of starting a museum. So I went down to see Tony Chavot in Beaumont, who was a lawyer and who was raised here in Claude, and whom I happened to know down there. And he said he would do all the legal work for us. So we started from that, and he told me what paperwork we needed to process through, and so we got together a copy of bylaws and the Constitution and bylaws for our museum, and sent it to him, and he filed the papers, incorporation papers, with the Secretary of State of the state of Texas, and in July 18th of 1990, the Secretary of State issued us a incorporation charter to be a private, non-profit educational institution, museum in the state of Texas, and we were off from there. Why, we had I had asked 10 people to act as temporary board of directors for the museum, and they are all listed in our charter, and so this after receiving our charter, we held an incorporation meeting in September of 1990, and accepted the bylaws and the charter and elected officers of the board. It was just paperwork and waiting for a while, because we had to also file 501c3 application with Internal Revenue Service, so that we would be a nonprofit organization under the Internal Revenue Service rules and regulations. And so this took several months, 6 to 8 months, to get our paperwork done with the IRS, and we were on our way. In the meantime, we had voted to expand our board of directors from 10 members to 20 members, so that we would be have board of directors from all areas of the community. We could expand out into the other areas and have people in the Wayside and Goodnight and Fairview and Washburn communities to be in the board of directors. In December, January of 1990, we had nominated and elected our full 20 board of directors, so we were up to strength on board of directors, and it was a matter of just organizing and looking for a building then to put this museum in. We checked several buildings around town, and one building we thought we wanted, and about a week before we was going to find out about getting it, it sold. And so we asked about the building across the street, and the family that owned it had a lot of stored items in there, so they wouldn't separate it with it. And then Mary Ann Rutherford and the Woolridge heirs volunteered to donate the 3 buildings here on the north to the museum, and then we accepted those, and sometime during the next year we got the title to it and started renovating, started work on it. And it was just bricks and mortar for about a year and a half then, and had quite a few people come in and volunteer to help us and help tear brick off and clean them, and then we hired a contractor to rebuild some of the walls inside the building that had fallen down, and let's see, we kept working on the building until July of 1993, at which time we had the opening on the opening ceremonies during the Old Settlers Reunion in 1990, July the 10th, 1990. And the results inside is what you see from all of those volunteer hours, and there was many volunteer hours put in. So it more volunteer hours than money. It's we never had a lot of money to deal with. We just operated off of memberships and the little donations we got. Our bylaws and constitution was spelled out so that we had about 6 different memberships, and those people taking out those memberships have sustained the museum through construction and renovation phase and opened us up. The theater was belonged to some heirs of the family that originally helped build the theater and these other buildings. There's 6 buildings here built in 1915. All 6 of them built together. And the Cavens family owned the 3 buildings on the north, and the Watson family owned the 3 buildings on the south, and that included the Gym Theater. And the Gym Theater still was the only building that still belonged to the Watson heirs, but it belonged to a great-granddaughter of the original builder. And it came up for sale in, early '93, and we was able to come up with enough money to buy that building. It was the only way we could get it, and the board of directors didn't want to let the building get away. They wanted it to become part of the museum, and so we went ahead and bought the building, and then after we received the deed to the building, Roy filed a grant with the Meadows Foundation, and we received a Meadows Foundation grant to renovate the theater, and we're still in the process of that. We still have 2 or 3 more months to spend that grant money and get the theater finished. We're trying to put it back as close as we can and still modernize with certain things like heating and air conditioning that was never in the building before. And so naturally you have to make major changes if you're going to do something like that. And we're in the process right now of installing the heating system, and next summer we'll add the air conditioning unit to that, and it'll be heated and air conditioned and ready to go by the summer. So.